Greetings, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. There are two main reasons why so many sincere, well-meaning and honest people are having such a hard time accepting that the Israelites never crossed the Red Sea. They cling to the belief that the Israelites crossed the Red Sea even after they find out that the body of water which the Israelites crossed on their way out of Egypt was not called Red Sea. It was the Sea of Reeds. They hang on to that belief even though they are aware that the waters of the Red Sea are salty and that reeds do not grow in salty water. They refuse to let go of that belief despite the fact that the book of Exodus chapter 10 and verse 19 makes it very clear that the locust swarm which was plaguing the land of Egypt was blown out of Egypt and into the Sea of Reeds by a wind that was blowing westwards, meaning that the Sea of Reeds must have been located to the west of Egypt, while the Red Sea is located to the east of Egypt. They will not change their minds even after listening to the evidence presented in the video on this channel titled Mount Sinai is in North Africa, and which proves that the Israelites went west and not east when they left Egypt. The first of those two reasons is that most such people have no idea what other body of water the Israelites could possibly have crossed on their way out of Egypt except the Red Sea. And that is because most people have never heard of Lake Moeris. Lake Moeris was a large freshwater lake located to the west of the Nile River, and which in years past was roughly the same in size as Lake Chad is today. All that remains of Lake Moeris is the relatively tiny and now salty Lake Cayun, which is about 80 kilometers southwest of Cairo. Moeris is the Greek pronunciation of the name of the pharaoh who the lake was named after. That pharaoh, as well as his predecessor and also his successor, had their seat of government in the region of Lake Moeris. The hieroglyphic spelling of the name of that pharaoh sounds more like Merwer, which is interesting because according to the book of Joshua chapter 65 and verse 37, the Israelites gave the name Meror to the pharaoh who ordered their newly born male children to be drowned. Evidently, Moses was able to travel so quickly between the palace of the pharaoh and the camp of the Israelites because the Israelites were living in the region of Lake Moeris. And that is why the entire host of the Israelites that was departing Egypt took only 3 days to get to the shores of the Sea of Reeds, because the Sea of Reeds was Lake Moeris, and Lake Moeris is the body of water which the Israelites crossed on their way out of Egypt. The Bible indicates that the Israelites were neighbors with a people called the Ammonites. The Ammonites were descendants of Abraham's nephew Lot. Several ancient maps indicate a place called Ammon in the western part of modern-day Egypt. In fact, the Greek historian Herodotus wrote that a ruler over Egypt called Cambyses lost an army of 50,000 people, which he had sent into the desert to destroy the oracle of Ammon that was at that time at a place called Siwa. The Siwa oasis is located in the western part of Egypt, modern-day Egypt, towards its border with Libya. If this Ammon is the same as the Ammon of the Bible, as I believe that it is, then this is further evidence that the Israelites went west when they left Egypt, because only by going west could they have ended up being neighbors with the children of Ammon. The truth, brothers and sisters, is that most people believe that the Israelites crossed the Red Sea for no other reason than that the people who they first heard the story of the Exodus from said that they did. There is no other evidence. Zero. And yet, most people take the position that except it be proven that the Israelites never crossed the Red Sea, then they did. And that is very sad, because that position has led to the spilling of so much innocent human blood on this continent, as the next reason will show. That second reason is that many people are not really ready or prepared to deal with the implications of accepting that the Israelites never crossed the Red Sea. Consider, for example, those who adhere to the Islamic faith. The Bible reports several interactions between the Israelites and a people called the Midianites. Upon leaving Egypt, for example, the Israelites went to Mount Sinai, which was or still is in the land, in or near the land of the Midianites. The last war that the Israelites fought under Moses was against the Midianites. The Midianites were descendants of a person called Midian, who was the fourth son that Abraham had by his third wife Keturah. We know that the Midianites were Arabs because the book of Jubilees chapter 20 and verses 12 and 13 say that the sons of Keturah and the sons of Ishmael intermingled with one another and came to be known as the Arabs. For that intermingling to occur, they must have been living in the same general area. And so if the Israelites got to the land of the Arabs, who include the descendants of Abraham's son Ishmael, by going west, then it follows that the people who live in the land that is across the Red Sea from Egypt and from whom the Quran came cannot be descendants of Abraham's son Ishmael. It also means that all the events which the Islamic faith claims to have taken place at certain venerated sites in that land, and which involved Hagar, Ishmael and Abraham, could not have taken place there. And so for a person who professes the Islamic faith to accept that the Israelites never crossed the Red Sea, they must be prepared to also admit that the founder of that faith either did not know this truth or intentionally misled them into believing a lie. The remedy for both situations is to abandon that faith altogether, and that is not an easy thing to do. There is strong evidence that the Amazigh people of Northern Africa are the Arabs of the Bible. In fact, the word Arab may itself be a corruption of the word Auraba, which is the name of one of the Amazigh tribes. The people who the Greeks called Numidians are most likely descendants of Midian, who was the fourth son of Abraham by Keturah. Their territory covered most of Algeria and parts of western Tunisia. The Shua Arabs of Nigeria, Cameroon and Chad most likely received their name from Shua, who was the last-born son of Abraham by his wife Keturah. In 1925, the French army assisted one of their countrymen to open, or shall I say to desecrate, the tomb in which they found the skeleton of a woman who was buried with much jewelry, including 7 gold and 7 silver bracelets on her arms. That tomb is at a place called Abalessa, which is in the Ahaga Mountains of southern Algeria. Indigenous residents of that area esteemed the woman buried in that tomb as a princess who was driven out from some place and who was the mother of them all. That is interesting because we know that Hagar, who was the mother of all the Ishmaelites, was an Egyptian princess whom Abraham sent away. It is very likely that the Ahaga Mountains were named after Hagar and that the Ishmaelites settled in the region of southern Algeria. Accepting that the Amazigh tribes of northern Africa are the Arabs of the Bible requires that one also accept that the language in which the Quran is written cannot possibly be Arabic. How can it be Arabic if the people who spoke it are not Arabs? The Bible identifies a person as Arab not by the language that they speak, but by their ethnic descent. There was never a language which was unique to Arabs and which other peoples did not also speak. In fact, it is almost inconceivable that the Arabs, who were descendants of Abraham, spoke a different language than their own father. That language is Hebrew. And so if a search was to be made today of whatever remains of the Hebrew language, then a really good place to begin would be with the Tamazight languages of the Amazigh people of Northern Africa. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and have a great day. Bye-bye.